Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for being here.
This is introduce you guys to the chief and her new role as commander for Brooklyn North and the 10 precincts of Brooklyn North. She'll tell you a little bit about what she's doing and going to do, and then we'll ask questions, one question at a time, one part to a question. You get a second chance. So let's keep it nice and simple. Chief?
So good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for being here. My name is Judith Harrison. I am a 23-year veteran of the New York City Police Department. I began my career in April 1997. I started off as a patrol officer in the 103 precinct, then the 102 precinct, and then I made my way up the supervisory ranks, culminating with my promotion to assistant chief 2 Mondays ago on June 29th. So I am a Queens resident. I grew up in Queens. I grew up in the confines of the 105 precinct, where my mom also was a civilian member of the service. She was a police administrative aide in the 105 precinct. And that's really when my love of policing started, probably back in the 80s when I was a preteen. My mother used to work 2 jobs. My mother worked at the police department during the day, and for some time, she worked at JFK Airport in the evenings. And in the evenings, my brother and I were home alone. We were latchkey kids, and with me being the older of the 2, I was responsible to make sure we did our homework, and we ate, and we cleaned up, and we got ourselves ready for school. But something that was very impactful would happen during those evening hours. Sometimes the police officers from the 105 precinct would drive by because they knew my mom was at work and they knew that her children were home alone. And they would sometimes just activate the lights and the sirens. My brother and I, we'd run to the window, we'd give them a thumbs up, let them know we were okay. And that was really the start of when I really wanted to be a police officer, because I was so profoundly impacted by the gestures of the police. I grew up with the police. I saw them as my friends. I saw them as an extension of my family. And I saw them as people that were around when my parents weren't around. So that's where my love of policing began.
If anybody has some questions of the chief about the issues in Brooklyn, now's a good time. Yes?
Thank you. Congratulations on being commanding officer of Brooklyn North.
Thank you.
I know you've only been there for like 2 weeks or so, but can you assess the situation, particularly when it comes to shootings and violence
Sure.
in Brooklyn North? Because there does seem to be a large amount this year, and what are your plans to combat it in the future?
Sure. Well, shootings last week in Brooklyn North, we had 22 shooting incidents versus 3 for the same time period last year. Significant increase. Out of the 22 shooting incidents, there were 26 shooting victims. And in addition to that, we also had 6 murders. Certainly, I'm very concerned about the violence in Brooklyn North. I'm extremely concerned about it. I know that there's just a small number of people in Brooklyn North that are responsible for the bulk of the violence. And obviously, we are laser focused at turning our attention to those individuals and making sure that we build strong cases against them and bring those cases to court for prosecution.
John?
Chief, what role do gangs have in the violence in Brooklyn North, and how do you plan to address the gang issue?
We're seeing a lot of gang violence in Brooklyn North. We're seeing a lot of retaliatory violence in Brooklyn North by gang members. We're meeting regularly with our counterparts in the Detective Bureau, particularly our Violent Felony Squad and our gang squads, to really try to quell violence. I had a conversation not too long ago with a former gang member, and just trying to pick his brain about what it was like for him, what made him join a gang. what it was like for him when he was in the gang, and what led to him leaving the gang. And I think that's going to be a key, really getting to these mostly young men, and really trying to work with them to let them see that this is not the way to go. And whether it's maybe helping them get GEDs or get into college or trade school, but something has to happen. We have to really connect, take the time to connect with them, to let them know that violence is not the way.
Tina.
Hi, Chief. Congratulations.
Hi,
First of all,
thank you.
And I'm going to ask you, do you feel like it's fair to put cops out on the street right now, that their training is kind of obsolete when it comes to the new law that's in effect?
Well, I guess maybe I'm a little biased. I think that we are the best trained police department in the world. I've been making my rounds, speaking to police officers. I've gone to every command. I've gone to multiple incidents, and I'm letting the police officers know that they need to remember the why. Why did you join this job? And never forget that. Never forget that you're here to protect and serve. And when that's at the heart of everything you do, you'll be okay. So I'm really letting the officers know that I support them, the department supports them, and I'll be working on police-community relations, because you know what? The community needs the police, but the police need the community too. It's a two-way street. We need each other, and we have to understand each other, we have to communicate with each other, but more importantly, we have to trust each other. So I'll be working on that.
Shayna.
Congratulations, Chief.
Thank you.
So Brooklyn North is famously a difficult section of the city when it comes to crime. What new initiatives or programs are you thinking about putting into place? And to that question also, how do you see instituting community policing, which is apparent, the goal of, I guess, the mayor and the police department in terms of fighting back against serious violent crime?
I'll start with the second half of your question, and I'll say it again. I said it before. Community is a key. We have to do this with the community. We have to do this lockstep with the community. We have to make sure we're communicating with members of the community. We have to make sure we're communicating with clergy. We have to make sure we're communicating with key stakeholders in the community. We're going to do this with the community, so we have to be very communicative, and we have to work together, and I'm looking forward to doing that. I've already had several meetings with community members. I've been out in the community. I've been out at several events talking to the community. I was out at the scene of a shooting 2 days ago, and I was speaking with members of the community there, letting them know that the only way that we're going to do this is to do this together, because ultimately we want the same things. We want neighborhoods safe. We want crime down. We want neighborhoods safe for people who live, work, and visit Brooklyn.
Lee.
With your last role dealing with sex crimes, a lot was made to do about you being a woman, a black woman. Now you're going into Brooklyn. I don't know if there's been a woman commander there or black woman there before. Are you the first with that?
I am, sir.
How does that help you in this community? Because you said community and policing, but a lot of people are saying, like Black Lives Matter, it's
Sure.
a black issue.
Sure.
When it comes to black on black crime, it's a black issue. Some are saying blacks have to step up and really almost try to get the answers and solutions themselves as well. It's your son, it's your nephew, your cousin, your friend pulling the trigger, killing another black person.
I agree. So first of all, I want to thank you for the congratulatory wishes. Yes, I am the first woman to be the Brooklyn North Borough Commander. Certainly isn't lost on me how historic that is. If I can just say a quick story. Every day when I walk into the building where I work, there's a wall. And if you've ever been there, and if you haven't been there, I invite you to come and look at the wall. I call it the Wall of Fame. On that wall is 23 men, all former Brooklyn North Borough Commanders. And when my picture goes up there, I'll be the 24th person, but I'll be the first woman. At this time, black voices matter. Black voices in leadership matter. I've certainly been speaking to members of the community. I've been speaking to members of youth groups, civic organizations, not only in my new role, but in my role as the National Organization of Black Law Enforcement Executives, New York chapter president. In that role, we have a nationally recognized program called The Law in Your Community, where we go into the community, and not only do we speak to people about what should happen when they're involved in a police-citizen encounter, but we also encourage them to take the job, be the change they wish to see on this job.
Once again, what's your message to those in the community about, I don't know, somebody told me they should be turning in more people if they know they're committing the violence.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, you know, I think there's an old school don't snitch type of mentality, and we can't afford to live by that type of mentality. We really can't afford to do that. Like I said to you, 2 days ago, I was standing in the park where there was a 27-year-old male shot, killed. I have a 28-year-old son. That resonated with me. And when I went and I walked over to people who had gathered there, you have to ask questions. This could be your son, your husband, your nephew. If you know something, say something. We know that there's a fractured relationship right now between police and the community. We know that, we acknowledge it, but the way that we're going to heal that is to communicate with each other. We're going to do our due diligence to police with integrity, with respect, with courtesy, with compassion. So if you have information, bring us the information so we can bring the people that are responsible for the crimes in Brooklyn North to justice.
Anybody else? Any questions, sir?
Just to follow up on when we talk about the violence, particularly in the 7-5 precinct, there were in 2 recent Saturdays 2 very daring broad daylight shootings where someone walked up, shot another guy in the head, kept going. There was another one where the woman was killed, and an assault weapon was allegedly used. Have things gotten out of control in Brooklyn North, in your opinion? And do you have any updates in regards to those investigations?
Well, those are active investigations, so I won't comment on the active investigations. I'm very familiar with both of those incidents you're talking about. I was intimately involved with what was going on there, and certainly, like I said, I gave you the numbers with regard to the shooting incidents and the murder incidents, and they are definitely alarming. And I've been in contact with my precinct commanders who are just as committed as I am to driving down violence, and we are willing to do whatever it takes to work with members of the community, to work with violence interrupters, to work with our district attorney partners. It's going to take a multitude of people sitting at the table and having difficult conversations. And while we may not always agree on policing per se, one thing that we do agree on is we want our neighborhoods to be safe. And if we start from there and we put our heads together, we'll be able to work in conjunction with each other to make sure we do that.
Shayna?
Do you feel like the current policies of the Brooklyn District Attorney's Office are sufficient to support the police work that needs to be done in Brooklyn North and versus Borough?
What I will say is that the men and women in Brooklyn North are committed to driving down violence and enhancing the quality of life for the residents that live there. We will always work and do our best to keep crime down and to work with our community partners, including members of the DA's office and the DA himself, as well as our other partners, to ensure that we are helping to drive down violence.
Tina, please.
Sorry, I hate to dwell, but I mean, do you think police need new training to deal with the new guidelines that are under at this point?
I think the training is adequate. I have 100% faith in the police commissioner and the senior leadership of the New York City Police Department, and I think that, sure, it is a very difficult time to be a police officer right now, between bail reform and other reforms that have just impacted being a police officer. It's difficult, but we believe in this work, and we're ready to do this work, and we will do this work.
John?
Chief, they have a recent, they have a recent split retirements in NYPD, and squads like the 73 and 705 might be headlined. We have more seasoned detectives in some of the busy precincts in Brooklyn North that may be retiring. How do you think that might impact guess, the investigations or the investigation and the investigation of retaliatory shootings as well in the borough?
So with respect to retirements, people retire all the time. We have to work with the staff that we have. I'm confident in the staff that we have. You mentioned the 7-3 precinct, the 7-5 precinct. Both precincts, I've been here a little under 2 weeks. I visit those precincts multiple times. I've spoken to the officers, I've spoken to the commanders, and I know that everybody is really motivated and really want to help improve the quality of life in those commands, in those neighborhoods.
Dean.
Can I ask you about your leadership, because as you said, black voices matter, and we know the department is looking for diversity, so as a black woman, you fit 2 categories very importantly, but you have the experience. You've been a commander before. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because some people will say, oh, chief was just placed there, you know, as just a figure. Can you talk about your experience?
Sure. I have patrol experience at every rank, from starting off as a police officer on patrol. I did foot patrol, I did bicycle patrol, I certainly did radio motor patrol, all the way up to being a precinct commander, where I was intimately involved with every crime that was reported to the 2 precincts that I commanded. I was intimately involved with every crime, and I worked with the detectives to try to bring those crimes to a successful resolution, and even now as a borough commander. So I have extensive patrol experience, and I love patrol. It gives me an opportunity to connect with members of the community. I've already begun to start to do that, to work to identify ways that we can work in conjunction with each other to drive crime down and improve the quality of life.
Last question, anybody? Tina, another subject perhaps? That would be great.
Chief, how are the anti-crime officers fitting in with the work? What are they doing?
So our anti-crime officers have been repurposed. They're no longer driving around in plain clothes in unmarked vehicles, but they are now in their uniforms and they're on patrol. And they're the same people with knowledge of crimes, knowledge of historical gang issues. So I think it's a plus. They're still out there, they're still on patrol, they have the heart and the mind to want to do this work, and they're out there doing it.
Can I follow up on that? And
Go ahead, Dean.
ask other chiefs the same question when I have the opportunity, but has that, did it change for them? Because it was looked at, they were the ones to get out there and look for guns. Some people complained they were too aggressive, others said they were good at their job. But do they have similar roles, that they're just looking for guns, or are they now responding to calls?
They're responding for calls, and in the interim, yes, they're also, that's part of it. Looking for guns is part of being on patrol.
So thank you, everybody. Appreciate it. Chief will be available.
Thank you, everybody.